Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. It is the 9th week of the 2019 legislative session. Tuesday was the deadline for House and Senate committees to act on general bills that originated in the other chamber. Bills that survived are moving to the full House or Senate for more work. Tax and spending bills face later deadlines. Legislation discussed this week included measures that would focus on safety issues like human trafficking, school safety, and criminal justice reform. House Bill 571 would toughen human trafficking laws while protecting victims who were younger than 18. It survived this week's deadline, but Republican Senator Briggs Hobson of Vicksburg says there's more work to be done. He explains key points of the bill.
Well, one, it's supposed to help prevent human trafficking. We're going to really crack down on things. And the one thing that we look at commonly is sexual exploitation of minors. You got some minors that are being called into prostitution and trafficking, and people use them. And we're going to make sure, one, that we crack down on the criminals that are forcing these minors into those actions, but two is to give them some protection, give the minors some protection, and make sure that they're not held to a higher standard than where they should be under the law.
The Mississippi School Safety Act of 2019, House Bill 1283, is advancing from committee and onto the Senate floor for more discussion. Republican Senator Bryce Wiggins of Pascagoula says it's a way to streamline communication among state agencies that have a responsibility to protect Mississippians. He explains the bill.
So it does things such as requires school districts within 6 weeks of starting school to have an active shooter training, requires the Department of Ed to work with the Department of Mental Health to create programs, pilot programs to look at the children, to work with the children. It creates. It also brings in the Department of Homeland Security, also what's called the Fusion Center, to provide monitoring and assessment analysis of the districts in the school and what any threats there may be.
Senator Wiggins says the bill is based on recommendations from the governor's school safety task force. In a Judiciary A committee meeting, lawmakers passed a criminal justice reform bill. It survived this week's deadline, but not without some debate. MPB's Desiree Frazier has more.
Mississippi Democratic Senator Juan Barnett of Heidelberg is advocating passage of House Bill 1352.
It would give a lot of individuals the ability to have some fines and some convictions expunged. It would also ease driving records for those who are convicted of maybe driving under the influence of something other than alcohol. It also deals with opioid addiction. It deals with the fines and fees for those who are found indigent. So it just covers a wide array of topics that affect so many individuals under the criminal justice. And for the record, I know a lot of people, when they talk about criminal justice or we hear about criminal justice, they think that here we are trying to release everybody from prison or off of our prison rolls. That's not the case. This is only for non-violent offenders.
In certain cases, the bill would not require driver's license suspensions. But a lawyer with the state attorney general's office told the Judiciary Committee federal law requires drug offenders have their licenses suspended, and commercial licensed drivers with DUIs can't have their records expunged. The lawyer said Mississippi would be out of compliance and lose millions in federal funding. Republican Senator David Parker of Olive Branch voted against the bill. He's concerned about repeat offenders.
My fear is that over time, you might be forgiving a few of the initial offenses, and then in turn, that person who has repeat offenses might not be guilty of a felony further down the line because we've kind of non-adjudicated or forgiven those that have happened over time. And I feel strongly that, when I'm out on the road traveling, I want my family to be as protected as they can. I don't want other people's liberties to be taken away from them. But when someone chooses to do something that can affect my family, such as a crash or that kind of thing, I think we should be strong on crimes that have that repeat offender status.
Senator Barnett says he's willing to have language removed to prevent any conflicts with federal law. The bill passed out of committee on deadline day and now goes to the Senate floor for a vote.
A shortage of medical examiners in Mississippi is causing a backlog of autopsies. Staff members from the Department of Public Safety tell the Senate Appropriations Committee that medical examiners in the state are overworked and underpaid. Eric Brown is a DPS attorney. He says the problem did not occur overnight. He is asking the legislature for more funding to increase examiner salaries to make Mississippi more competitive.
Well, I didn't kill the bill that was just in the legislature recently where we're going to increase the amount of money that each autopsy was going to be paid. So I didn't kill that bill, but I believe the legislature did. So that bill was to simply give
charge to counties, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I think the bill was simply to increase the pay by $250. Nobody wanted to do that, but I didn't kill that bill. But that was the way we were asking for a little bit more money so we could make it work.
Public Safety Commissioner Marshall Fisher says the national recommendation of autopsies performed per examiner is 250 per year, but in Mississippi, the department is down to 2 examiners who perform more than double the national average.
We had 407 homicides in 2017. We had 418 homicides in 2018. We had 8 homicides this weekend. So when Eric referred to the backlog in the reports, there's not a backlog in the autopsies. The backlog is in the reports because these MEs have to also go to court. There's times when they'll get called to court. They may be in Oxford, and the next week they may be in Gulfport. These are not a bunch of excuses. This is just facts of life. That's the way it is.
House members complain it can take up to 18 months to get an autopsy report. During a Judiciary Committee meeting, lawmakers discussed Senate Bill 2161. House Democrat Angela Cockerham of Magnolia tells MPB's Desiree Frazier the measure clarifies definitions for positions in the state medical examiner's office, which is under the Department of Public Safety.
There are a lot of discussions or questions about the time it takes to get autopsies. And so during my discussion, I talked about hopefully with these definition clarifications and also with the clarifications in Section 2, that hopefully it would help with recruiting.
How does it do that?
Well, as you know, based on the questions that we got on the floor, there were a lot of questions with respect to the number of employees who are in that particular department and the number of individuals who perform autopsies. And we have given or increased the appropriation to this particular department back in 2017, appropriating probably about an additional $700,000 that's requested by DPS. And we're hoping that definition section aside in Section 2, that with those clarifications, that it will attract more individuals.
But House Democrat Bob Evans of Monticello, a defense attorney, says autopsies are currently done by doctors certified by the American Board of Pathology. Evans says he takes issue with the bill because it would require medical examiners be eligible for certification, but they wouldn't have to take the exam to become certified.
I know how things work in the House. I know that the main thing that the people who just voted for that bill we're thinking about is if we do this, we're going to get faster autopsies. Well, unfortunately, I don't think that's how you need to think about it. If it's important for you to get an autopsy, the speed of it might be a factor, but certainly the primary, the number one requirement or need or whatever you want to call it would be that, in fact, when you get that autopsy, however long it takes, that it, in fact, is reliable, that it was done right, and it was done by someone who is recognized by the American Board of Pathology to be qualified and able to do it. And this bill lessens that, so we may get quicker autopsies. But to go along with that, I started to say we may get less accurate autopsies. I won't say may to that. I say we will get less accurate autopsies.
Representative Cockerham says she does not believe the intent of DPS is to reduce any qualifications. Senate Bill 2161 passed and will go to the governor's office for his consideration. Senate lawmakers passed House Bill 991. It would allow local governments to collect bills such as delinquent taxes or water and sewer payments from income tax refunds. Republican Senator Joey Fillingane of Sumrall chairs the Finance Committee.
If you haven't paid your sewage bill or your water bill or your tax bill, or if, for instance, your property has been allowed to grow up and you're not maintaining the code regulations for having trash on your property, rubbish, or overgrown yards or trees or whatever, if the city has to expend dollars to go out and clean that up for you because you have chosen not to, then they assess you a fee for that service. And if you don't pay that fee and it becomes delinquent, then it could be that money owed as well. So it's not just for taxes, although taxes are probably the majority of what we're talking about here.
Fillingane says income tax refunds can already be garnished for child support and college debts. Democratic Senator Derek Simmons of Greenville he voted against the bill. He says he's concerned it will hurt low-income families.
I would just like for us as policymakers to take into consideration that we have Mississippians who they don't have health insurance. They may have to provide for their own health insurance. Some are living in different socioeconomic conditions or backgrounds that they are affected by. And so when they have a traffic ticket, or they may have been in municipal court or justice court, and they've had a situation and they are unable to pay a fine, then it may be a reason behind that. If we can spend a little more time trying to figure out what are the reasons behind the debt, as opposed to just passing a bill to take their income tax.
So let's get straight to the point now with views from both sides of the aisle. Sitting in for Brandon Jones is Senator David Blunt, a Democrat from Jackson. Austin Barber is a national Republican strategist and founder of the Clearwater Group. Thank you both for being here on that issue. Senator Blunt, let me start with you on this issue of the state medical examiner's office. This seems to affect families and law enforcement and prosecution. It's an issue that came up a few years back, and now it's come up again. It's a pretty serious issue.
It's very serious, and it's a breakdown in the way state government is supposed to work, and it affects not only, as you said, criminal prosecutions, but anybody who needs an autopsy done for a family member. And what we're seeing here as a result of the budget cuts that have been coming down the line in the last few years is real pressure on the Department of Public Safety. They do these autopsies. Mississippi is understaffed. Our folks are underpaid. We recently lost one of our 3 medical examiners to another state. They're doing a workload that's way above national standards. You're seeing this throughout the department. I mean, anybody who's had to go get a driver's license and had to wait for hours and hours and hours to get a driver's license sees the impact of this. And it's something that we've got to address. One thing I know we ought to do is we ought to raise the fee that counties are required to pay to do this. It hasn't been raised in almost 40 years. So that's one thing that we could do to put some more money into that department, to fund this position and make it work more effectively.
Yeah, I can't disagree with Senator Blunt about his comments that this is a very important issue. I couldn't imagine that if a relative of mine was, had died and an autopsy needed to be done, and I had to wait weeks and months, nevertheless more than a year for that, how horrible that would be to go through that experience. But listen, you also can't tell me that whatever the cost is to hire a new medical examiner, whether that's $100,000, $200,000, I don't know what these people get paid. They're obviously really good at what they do, but that you can't go find that money in a budget that they have at the Department of Public Safety. This is why I always say this when I sit here and in government, whether it's state government, local government, national government, even the agency, you got to set priorities. What are the priorities? The priority should be handling these autopsies when they come in. That is a huge issue. It's the number one responsibility of that. And leadership at DPS, you got to get it fixed. Go find the money to go hire however many people that you need to do to be able to get this job done and get it done correctly.
On the subject of criminal justice reform, this has been talked about, of course, on the national level as well of late. Austin, do you think it's being addressed sufficiently with what's being proposed in Mississippi?
Yeah, listen, I think it's a wonderful thing when we can have a real bipartisan conversation and bipartisan effort that's being led, of course, by both Republicans and Democrats at the national level and specifically here in Mississippi. And I think that's a proud moment. This is a big issue. It's a bipartisan issue. The governor should get a lot of credit for this. He had it in the State of the State. He's really pushed for this. Obviously, we just heard from Senator Juan Barnett, who's a Democrat from Jones County, who's one of the lead members in the legislature who's working on this. It's important to know, though, this is dealing with non-violent offenders, and I want to make sure that people understand. If I have 15 different non-violent felonies, I can't get them removed 15 different times. This is a one-time offer for only one offense, and I think that's really important. It's not for DUIs. It's for traffic fines, responding to summons, getting caught with a minimal amount of marijuana in your pocket as you're walking down the street. The expungement, again, non-violent offenders, bad checks, shoplifters, these kinds of people. Listen, I also love the part of this that, and we talked about this before, that removes sort of this bias process that commissions and boards have who grant license to people who are wanting to get their license to be a barber or a cosmetologist or whatever. But listen, we know this. Most nonviolent offenders, they're going to get out of prison. Okay? We need them to become valuable members of society. And I think this is a great vehicle and pathway and legislation to help them become that versus having no other options and they're heading right back to prison.
You're right. I mean, this has got to be the most encouraging bipartisan issue that we've seen this term. And you've got leading Republicans and Democrats working on this. We simply can't afford as a state to lock up in prison for extended sentences nonviolent offenders. People who are dangerous need to be locked up. But people who are not, we need to get them back into society. We need to expand drug courts, which have been very successful here in Hinds County. We need to remove barriers to reemployment. We need to remove barriers to regaining the right to vote. All of this is something that I think you're having a healthy discussion on from members of both parties, and I hope we can make progress this year.
Yeah, I think this bill is going to probably head towards conference. There'll be lots of small changes, who fits the list of expungements and who doesn't. We're not to the end yet until we get to the end of the conference and the bill goes back to both chambers.
Regarding the school safety bill, school safety on its own, Senator Blunt, seems to be something that nobody would be opposed to. Everybody can get behind the idea of school safety. Does the legislation, though, in question do what it appears to do?
I don't think there's much wrong with it. I don't know that it quite will deliver a lot of the things that we need to see. Again, I think it's probably a good step. I do question whether or not we need to have young children, kindergarten, first, second, third grade children doing these drills. I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. There's a lot of money in here for mental health of young children. But, it's obviously an issue as parents we're concerned about. So I think you'll see something this year get passed.
Yeah, look, I think there are a lot of common sense approaches in here. They're not perfect, but they think this is definitively a step in the right direction. We're going to disagree on the drill thing. We do tornado drills, we do fire drills, and we've been doing them since you and I were in school, maybe even since you were in school, Wilson.
Since my mama was in school.
Yes, exactly. So I think these are important. Look, they're a reality. Kids see the TV, kids see news. Everybody who's involved in these schools, running the schools, the teachers, the administration, the kids, they got to know what to do in these situations. Listen, I think I love there's an aspect in here where every school employee is going to have to take a refresher course in mental health suicide prevention every 2 years, being more aware of the troubled students that are at campus. That's a good thing.
It is good. They're not specific to shooter incidents specifically.
I agree.
But yes, more awareness of mental health and suicide and issues like that. Yes, you're right.
I love the part in here where they're going to have someone who's an expert in this who's going to go to each school and do what they call a threat assessment. I'm on the board of a local independent school here in the Jackson area, and we did this year and had some experts come in. We found lots of issues. I shouldn't say lots. That's not fair. We found some significant issues that we needed to pay attention to and get remedy to protect our kids, and I like that they're doing that. I think that is a very smart thing. Again, this is smart legislation. I can't imagine this doesn't probably end up in conference and something good and positive comes out and gets passed by the end of the year, I would assume.
Yeah, hope so.
Senator Blunt, we haven't talked about teacher pay raises on this program in a couple of weeks. What's the status of the teacher pay raise, and are we just waiting on what the revenue figure is going to be before the legislature knows how much money can actually be set aside for teachers this year and next?
Teacher pay raise is alive. We are waiting on more budget numbers to see what we can do. Frankly, what's being proposed is not sufficient. We are not keeping pace. We are behind, and we are falling further behind. And again, it's a direct result of hundreds of millions of dollars in reckless budget and tax cuts that have been passed by this legislature this term. What is being proposed is less than $10 a week, less than $10 a week, and it's not sufficient. We have got to do better for our teachers than is currently being proposed. I hope we can do that. We've identified some things on the Democratic side to double that amount without blowing up the budget. But we have got, listen, 10 years ago, there were more than 7,600 teachers' licenses issued in Mississippi, 7,600. Recently, just last year, 600. That is more than a 90% decrease in the number of teacher licenses being granted in this state, and pay is critically important. It's not enough what's on the table right now, and the Democrats in the Senate and the House are going to be fighting to increase that amount.
Yeah, I think this is a good debate to have. My mother was a public school teacher. Teachers are never going to get paid as much as they should, and we need to find ways to pay them more. And I will say, under Republican leadership, this would be their second pay raise. I'm sure they wish that they were able to pay more. I know they're happy to get done what you guys are able to agree to this year. You know, I always look back at the accomplishments of what an administration or what a group of leaders do. This one, of course, being the governor, Phil Bryant, Tate Reeves and Philip Gunn, and we've got really good numbers that show that our kids are graduating at a record high level for Mississippi. We are spending more money on K through 12 than we've ever spent, and I know that's a little bit of a difficult number sometimes to gather, because I know there's some on your side of the aisle who really believe in sort of the MAEP formula. But I look and see what are we getting done. We've got more kids that are able to read going from the 3rd to 4th grade level. We've got school choice that are helping kids get out of, school districts that they're just trapped into. So I think it's a good debate to have, and I am encouraged that you guys are going to continue to have this debate to the end, and hopefully the revenue numbers will be up, and you'll have more money to be able to do things like this.
We talked about teachers. What about state employees who also, of course, have been asking for a pay raise?
There hasn't been an across-the-board state employee pay raise in more than a decade. And as Democrats, we want to see that done this year. I'll point out to your viewers the difference. The teacher salaries are set in the general law. State employee pay raises can be passed in a simple appropriations bill. And there was an effort among House Democrats to provide raises this year. I will say there has been bipartisan agreement on paying for the increased funding that the retirement system requires. And that includes state employees, county employees, city employees, public school teachers. We're committed to keeping the retirement system strong for everybody in that system. That's a benefit. It's not a benefit that they'll take home, but it's a benefit. But we need an across-the-board state employees pay raise. We haven't had it in more than 10 years. We've got a large number of state employees that are eligible to retire right now, and we need to keep them. And part of that will be a pay raise.
Yeah, we've certainly seen the Appropriations Chairman in the House, John Reed from Jackson County, say this is a priority to him. And he and Buck Clark, who's the Appropriations Chairman of the State Senate, and other members, both Republican and Democrat, are simply waiting for tax revenue estimates to come in to see how much more money are we going to have to be able to spend on issues like this. We talk about PERS. We've talked about PERS before, the Public Employment Retirement System. I've said in this chair, it's a ticking time bomb. $60 million more will have to spend to secure, and it's important. We got to take care of the retirement system. We got to take care of the people who've worked as state employees who work in this building and work throughout the state of their retirement. But we've got to do something next year when you guys come back to office to figure out the next session, how do we begin to make changes and reforms at PERS to protect the retirement for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of state employees around the state?
Well, we can have that discussion, but Democrats are going to be committed to protecting the retirement system for everybody, and Democrats are going to be committed to a defined benefit retirement system for teachers and state employees.
They say not a whole lot substantive gets done in an election year at the Capitol. You're fortunate enough, Senator, that this year you don't face any opposition in the primary or the general election. But what would you point to as real successes this session, and what do you still hope to see happen?
Well, I hope we can, as we talked about, I hope we can have a teacher pay raise. I hope we can pass criminal justice reform. I think those are positive. We're not seeing any progress on the other big issue, which is state infrastructure. We had a special session last year, which I think is going to be a real benefit to cities and counties with their infrastructure, but really no plan on how to deal with state infrastructure other than a lottery, which is not approaching what needs to be done. But if we can do a teacher pay raise, pass criminal justice reform, I think we can pass a bond bill this year to take care of our public buildings at state universities and community colleges. I wouldn't say that's a A+ in terms of accomplishments, but that would be some positive things to come out of this session.
All right, Senator Blunt, thank you for filling in for us this week. Always nice to have you.
Happy to be here.
Austin, thank you as always. And we thank you for joining us. We are out of time, and don't forget you can watch this program on our website, mpbonline.org/issue. And we invite you to tune in to At Issue on MPB Think Radio, Monday mornings at 9. We thank you for joining us on the television. Good night.